best is yet to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was looking at.
So I brought you the Shehekianu,
Shehekianu.
and you want to practice saying it.
Do you have an extra one?
Well,
Shehekianu.
Here's,
There we go.
yeah, there's some of that. This, the Shehekianu, the transliteration of it is, I'll say it once and then, because when my Hebrew teacher, who was the little Holocaust survivor that lived in Israel 40 years before she came here, she had a very strong accent. So when she was teaching me, I actually could say the blessings and all more in an Israeli type of, not Israeli accent, but Israeli type of accent than the people in our synagogue who never left the country and just went to Hebrew school. So they, like, for instance, they would go, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam. Okay. But she taught me to say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam. Shehekianu v'kimanu, v'hikianu v'azman v'azeh. So I had a little bit more of an accent, only because I was copying her, because she would say it and I would repeat it, and that went on and on. But it means, blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler or king of the universe, who has granted us life, sustained us, and enabled us to reach this occasion. And this was said on May 14th, 1948, when Israel was declared a state and became a nation once again. Ben-Gurion read off the Constitution, Charter of Independence, and then the rabbi read or pronounced the Shehekianu for bringing us to this occasion. And then they sang the Hatikvah, which is their national anthem, and it's very mournful. Have you ever heard it? I'll have to bring in a recording of that, because when we worked on an army base, we had to sing it every morning at flag raising, and it was like doo 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 doo. So anyway, you want to practice saying it once out loud together? Okay.
Yeah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam shehekianu v'himanu v'higianu lazman hazeh.
There's a blessing, like this Torah study that we started, I was telling you about. There's a blessing that you do before and after that's in the book, and it shows it in English and then the transliteration.
I'll have to bring my,
You ought to hear us
have
try
one
and
of
say it.
those.
Maybe you could pronounce some of the,
I could try.
the right way of pronouncing it,
Yeah,
I want to
sometimes
get good at it.
you just, after hearing people speak a lot, you pick up where the accent is. Because, what was one of the things I said? When you greet a man or a woman, it's slightly different. And it's, hi, how are you? It's, Ma shlomcha. Ma shlomcha is to a man. Hi, how are you? To male gender. But to a woman, it's ma shlomech. You get that, But I can't do that very well. And I at first over there when I was trying out the Hebrew, the little that I had learned, a little is dangerous, because if you say a little, they think you know a lot, and then you're lost. But I was like bragging one time on the army base, and yeah, I know a little bit here and there. So we're sitting in the mess hall, and we're with the soldiers and these civilian workers, and the guy comes over, and he didn't know any English, and he was a worker, and he's sitting there, and everybody's trying to speak to him, and he's just eating and going. And I turned around, because I'm going to impress my friends, and I said, no, wait, I don't know why my mind just launched into German. I was going to say Bulgarian beer. I said, I can't even think how I said it now. I asked him where he lived, and he went, oh! And then he starts talking to me, and it was like, That's all I know.
Un poco. Un poco.
Did I tell you the joke that we pulled? I think I did already. The joke that my group pulled on the soldiers that day. I think early on I might have said. Well, one of the first sentences I could say was, oh, I can't even think of it now. My mind is blanking out. I'll think of it later, I'll tell you, because I gotta get to the news, or I'll get in trouble for taking too long. So, okay, on the news. Last Thursday, the UK Guardian poll said 75% of the poll that was taken over in the UK said Rouhani, you know, the Iranian president now, deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. Well, I almost fell off the chair because this was just as bad to me as when Arafat got it. And Arafat got it. With the Nobel Peace Prize, it was set to be announced on Friday. Readers of the UK's Guardian newspaper overwhelmingly support one dark horse candidate for the award, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani. The paper explains its rationale behind the selection, saying that Rouhani has already brought encouraging changes, not the least putting an end to the embarrassment of Ahmadinejad years, starting a new chapter for improved relations with the West. This month, Rouhani's charm offensive, you've heard that in the news, resulted in a meeting between Iranian officials and the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, and a personal phone call between Rouhani and U.S. President Barack Obama. Now that just has to irk you, doesn't it? However, good news, Rouhani did not win after all. It's good news, bad news. On Friday, it was announced that the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, the OPCW, won the Nobel Peace Prize on Friday for working to eliminate the scourge that has haunted generations from World War I to the battlefields of Syria. That's an organization based in the Netherlands, and it's UN-backed. As soon as I saw UN-backed, I thought, they're the group that's supposedly overseeing the destruction of Syria's chemical weapons right now. So raise your hand if you think this is going to work.
The person that should have got the Nobel Peace Prize was that little girl that they shot.
That's right.
And she was going to get the prize, and they changed her mind.
Yeah.
And she stood up against terrorists.
Yep.
And she's the one that should have got
So,
the
did she die?
No, she
But
didn't die.
It's
They
all
come into
upside down.
her house or her class and shot her, and then shot her in the head, and she survived. And because she stood up to them.
Yeah.
I heard her on NPR the other day.
Huh?
She's on fire. She's 16 years old.
She's the girl that should have got the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yep.
That girl.
Yep.
In our
That was a
world.
good long. That was a
It was
good
in
while ago.
Pakistan.
That
She
was
shot
about
us.
it.
And they said
8,
if
10,
she comes
12.
back to Pakistan, she's dead.
8, 10, 12 months ago that happened, wasn't it?
Yeah,
It was in Pakistan.
yeah.
And she's real headstrong.
She is. None of it bothers her. She's on fire and she's telling it like it is.
Yeah.
But if she tries to go home to Pakistan, there's a big bounty on her.
See, they're afraid that women don't have the rights over there like we have here, so.
So meanwhile, even as the evil Iranian got the nod for the Nobel Peace Prize, poor old Bibi Netanyahu was at the UN trying to knock some sense into the so-called world leaders. But Europe is showing its true leanings. Secure America Now, which is a nonprofit advocacy social welfare organization that's dedicated to mobilizing a grassroots coalition of 2 million national security activists to support policies that will protect our nation against terrorist infiltration, attack, and capitulation to our enemies, reported, quote, as the world closes its ears to the warnings of Benjamin Netanyahu, Iran has upgraded its capacity to create weapons-grade nuclear power. They're like a watchdog group. Yet 2 days after Netanyahu's speech, the Obama administration urged Congress not to tighten the sanctions. Netanyahu said, "It is becoming increasingly clear that Israel will be forced to take action against Iran by itself." As Prime Minister Netanyahu said, quote, "Israel will go it alone if it must." And that was my point of bringing this particular news item to you, because it's getting there, folks.
Yeah, it's all
It's
in,
chipping away and it's
Yeah, it
getting
is.
it's
there.
all in the plan.
Yeah.
Israel will not permit Iran to attain nuclear weapons. He said that. This is just more evidence that things are lining up for Israel to be isolated, which is the only way they will finally acknowledge Yahweh, when he fulfills Ezekiel 38 and delivers them from certain annihilation. So unfortunately, we see this happening. Bad news, and we can't do nothing about it, but it's still the way it's supposed to be. It has to be that way. Okay, another news item, and this one got to me. I open up a file at the beginning of the week, and as I get information, I just kind of pick and choose what ones show more of the inclination towards what's happening in these end days that's furthering along the agenda. So last Tuesday evening, I was channel surfing, and I stopped on Jack Van Impe, and I like him. Okay. He was talking about an upcoming program where they would discuss how Chrislam, remember we were talking a little bit about Chrislam? They're trying to combine Christianity and Islam. They're going to have an upcoming program where they would discuss how Chrislam is making its mark and taking its toll on Christianity and the church, and who is the big name promoting it. Does anybody know? I mean, there are several people, but
Pope?
no. Rick Warren.
Possibility.
Who?
Rick
Rick
Warren.
Warren, purpose-driven life.
Purpose-driven guy,
Rick
yeah.
Warren, I don't know.
Really?
Rick Warren wrote The Purpose-Driven Life,
A long time
and it was
ago,
this
yeah.
big rage, and they had workbooks, and all these churches adopted his. He has when he goes into a church that invites him to come in, he takes over, he clears out the pillars of the church, the old folks, because they're going to resist him. He develops it into like a business type of a program.
Yeah,
And then he starts
Yeah.
his agenda. But it's supposed to be great, because you're supposed to be purpose-driven, and all this.
yeah.
So evidently, there are new accusations against mega church
Okay.
pastor Rick Warren about promoting a new world religion. I always thought he might be the false prophet.
We can do that,
Not the Pope.
regular time.
Because he says it's wrong to study prophecy, it's
Yeah.
distracting.
Mhm.
Okay,
They do feel bad
That's
for
right.
him.
Yep, bye.
Oh, terrible.
So, Rick Warren promoting a new world religion that will usher in an Antichrist, despite Warren's adamant denials. But apparently Warren has embarked on an effort to heal divisions between evangelical Christians and Muslims by partnering with Southern California mosques and proposing a set of theological principles that includes acknowledging that Christians and Muslims worship the same God.
Oh, boy.
Do they?
well,
No.
now, could he be the Antichrist?
No, I don't think he could be the Antichrist. I think he could be the false prophet who points
That's what I
to the
mean, you know.
Antichrist.
Not, yeah, okay.
And he's all tied in. He's tied in. I don't know if you know the background, but remember when they had the first presidential debate? Rick Warren was the moderator. You know why? Because he's very good friends with Rupert Murdoch, who owns Fox News. And Rupert Murdoch is not really a Christian or a conservative, but this is his station that promotes that. Because he has all these other things, including all of the printing and the printing companies and presses and everything that prints Rick Warren's books. So they're all
They're
just,
all connected.
they're all just in bed with each other.
Yeah, money.
So, here's the key to the answer to that question. Do Muslims, Christians and Muslims worship the same God? Do Muslims even claim to worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as Christians and Jews do? No, they do not. They believe God did not create a covenant with Isaac and Jacob, but rather with Abraham's firstborn son, Ishmael. This is the root of the whole problem. The root of the whole problem. They believe the Jewish and Christian Bibles are misrepresentations of truth. They believe the Quran accurately and faithfully represents the true personality and will of God. This is not a minor theological difference. It's as basic and fundamental as it gets. Worse yet, Warren is agreeing not to evangelize Muslims in favor of making friends, building peace, working on shared social service projects. Yes, they're all high ideals, but according to God, we're to introduce non-believers to Him and the pathway to salvation through repentance. A reporter for Charisma News reports that Rick Warren recently responded to one of his Twitter followers who asked, "Old guy on TV claims you support Chrislam. True?" That old guy, explains the reporter, was likely Jack Van Impe, who pulled his show off Trinity Broadcasting after naming several well-known ministers who are alleged to be backing Chrislam. And that's what I saw of Jack Van Impe. He was like, he was pounding the table. He was so upset. Well, Warren denies it and claims his life and ministry is built on the truth that Jesus is the only way and our inerrant Bible is our only true authority. He said, these are his words. But he did say that Christians and Muslims worship the same God. So what do you think Jesus would say about Rick Warren talking out both sides of his mouth? Jesus, as God, knowing all these things from the beginning, already answered. His reply is found in Matthew 7:21-23, and I quote, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. And on that day many will say to me, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do mighty works in your name?' And then I will declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness.'" So yes, we're not to judge someone else's salvation because we simply cannot see into their heart and into their intent the way Jesus can. So whether Rick Warren is saved or a heretic, we do not know, but we can make a judgment concerning his fruits of the Spirit. What fruit is he producing? An apple is an apple, an olive is an olive, a fig is a fig, a Christian is a believer in Jesus, a Muslim is a believer in what? The same God? What kind of fruitcake, fruit, is that? That you may certainly judge. And then okay. Not only is Bibi Netanyahu making noises about having to go it alone, this headline reads, it's in the Telegraph News out of London. "World should de-Americanize, says China, following default fears." The looming prospect of a U.S. default on debt prompted China to call for the world to de-Americanize amid warnings of a new global recession. Xinhu, or however they say it, the official government news agency, said that as American politicians continued to flounder over a deal to break the impasse, it is perhaps a good time for the befuddled world to start considering building a de-Americanized world. We're on our way out, people. Israel must go it alone and we must fall by the wayside, or else God will not be in the forefront of it all. He is the rescuer of his people, he and no other, and they shall know it. 6 months to go when John Kerry's 9-month deadline for final status agreement, or else. Else what, I do not know. But keep your eyes on that Passover date for the blood moon special coming Israel's way. And the very last one is, this was today, or what's today? Yesterday, I
Yeah,
think. 10 Jews were detained for praying on the Temple Mount. Police haul away Jews after they sing Hatikvah, the national anthem, and unfurl the Israeli flag atop the sensitive enclosure. No, I did not make a quick trip over, and no, it wasn't me.
That's the only land that Israel doesn't own yet, the Temple
That's
Mount.
right. They don't. That's the only one not in, that's the only piece of land in Israel that they do not have back in their possession.
Yeah.
They're supposed to have the sovereignty over it, but they gave it away, and that was Moshe Dayan, and it started another wandering in the wilderness. Who knows what would happen if they'd have kept it. Okay, so, let's see, how much time I got? Okay. Last week in Matthew 24, we have seen that Matthew 24 is not about the church. This is just a little review quick. But it's about Israel. We've seen the gathering of the elect, who in the context of verses 31 to 42 are about his people, the Jews. We've seen that those who will preach the gospel during the 70th week are the 144,000 Jewish virgins, the 2 Jewish witnesses, and God's angels themselves. We've seen the holy place mentioned in verse 15, and that will be the temple in Jerusalem and Israel. In verse 16, those who are in Judea refer to the people on the West Bank in Israel. In verse 20, the Sabbath mentioned is the Jewish holy day. In verse 22, the elect mentioned is Israel. In verse 28, there's a parable about the Battle of Armageddon in Israel. Wherever the dead body or carcass is, the eagle gathers to devour the flesh. And in verses 29 to 31 are about the gathering of the Jews to Israel at the second coming. The fig tree verses could have been just another parable about the signs of the nearness of the completion of all things, but we know that the fig tree represents Israel, and so the birth, the blossoming, and the fulfillment of the fig tree has a prophetic implication in these last days, precisely because we're seeing it unfold. And finally, we can see that in verses 37 to 41, they are not about the removal of the church at the rapture. I don't care what anybody says in church, it's not the church in Matthew 24, but about the lost being removed from the earth, as in the days of Noah, because Matthew 24 mentions the days of Noah. The evil ones were removed or taken, while the righteous remained, Noah and his family. Yet the rapture is just the opposite. The righteous are taken away, while the evil inhabitants, and a scripture just popped into my mind, I didn't even write it down. Righteous men are taken away, and no one gives it regard. I can't even remember the reference on that. But that's the rapture. The righteous are taken in the rapture, while the evil inhabitants on earth remain to go through the 70th week. So you can see right there, is in the days of Noah, what Jesus was talking about, he's talking about Israel. He's talking about the Jews. He's not talking about the rapture, and he's not talking about the church. Never mind that the church isn't even there yet. So, thus far, Matthew 24 is to Israel and about Israel, and our warnings for Israel of that which is about to come historically, what happened right after, 70 AD, and in the prophetic future. Matthew 24 is profitable for the church to know, but it's all about the Jews and the Jewish tribes who are dwelling in all parts of the earth. God knows where they are, and he will send his angels to supernaturally gather them to Israel at his return. Remember we said how Paul would just he's transported somehow. That's what's going to happen at the end. Because Jesus said, all his people, they're all going to be in Israel. They're all going to see me. So they can see him for the second time and know him as their Messiah. So that's so far in Matthew 24, and we're going to wind up Matthew 24 now, because we're going to get into in chapter 25 more parables that point out the same thing, but just in a little bit different way. They're a little more controversial. But right now we're at verse 43. But know this, that if the good man of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. This parable corresponds to the coming parable in chapter 25 regarding the wise and foolish virgins. It's basically an admonition to wait for the master, or wait for the bridegroom. And I say bridegroom not meaning for the church, because I have a whole other study I want to show you that the bridegroom is the bridegroom for Israel, not the church. The church is his body. But that's another story. Jesus said, hey, if you knew what time the burglar would be breaking in, would you be ready with your AK-47? But normally you would just go to sleep. Maybe you've got your flashlight and gun in the nightstand, but when you're snoozing, you're not aware someone's breaking and entering through your back door. But if you knew when the burglar, killer, kidnapper, thief was going to bust in the door and come looking for you, would you peacefully fall asleep? Verse 44, therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not, the Son of Man cometh. In other words, be vigilant, be ready, be prepared, for you just don't know when the thief might come in the night, or the Master, or the Messiah might just show up and surprise you. Now, is he talking to the church? Is he talking about the rapture? Only because people think, oh, it's a surprise. We don't know when he's coming for us. It's not the church. It's not the rapture. He's talking about the second coming. Be ready. Are we supposed to be ready for the second coming? No. No. So this does not indicate the rapture. Why? Because we have already seen in the previous verses it will be the same as in the days of Noah at the second coming, which is to the Jews. The ones taken will be the evil, and the righteous will be left to go into the kingdom. The rapture is just the opposite. At the rapture, we speculate when it will be, but it is not imminent, for certain things must happen first. Basic things, like Israel being back in the land, like the Sanhedrin back in business, like the church must be removed as Israel turns back to God in her old covenant relationship and rebuilds the temple. But there's an even more prominent reason. We know that Jesus is speaking to the Jews and only the Jews. In the verse he references the Son of Man. Does the church, do believers call Jesus the Christ, the Son of Man? No, never. He is the Son of God. 69 times in the Gospels does Jesus call himself the Son of Man. The Hebrew for Son of Man is Ben Adam, Adam, Ben Adam. Ben means son, Adam means ground. So it's the son of the ground. He was taken from the earth and formed, God formed. Adam is Hebrew for ground or earth. Adam, or Adam, was formed from the dirt and dust of the earth. But what is the significance of the title Son of Man? It signifies the revelation of the humanity and the divinity of Christ. And the frequent use he made of it regarding himself shows that this is what he called himself. But what is the most significant reason Jesus used this title for himself? Did you ever have a study on this about the Son of Man? The Son of Man is from the book of Daniel. And here comes our prophecy. And Daniel describes a vision he had. Listen to what he says. I saw visions in the night, and behold, with the clouds of heaven there came one like the Son of Man. And he came to the Ancient of Days, and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion, and glory, and kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom is one that shall not be destroyed. That's in Daniel 7. So by Jesus calling himself the Son of Man, I guess he was hoping they'd know the scriptures, because he wanted his people to equate that title with the Old Testament scriptures, because it described who he was and what he would do, and the prophetic eternal kingdom that he would bring in. He called himself the Son of Man. He was and is the Messiah, and his dominion is an everlasting dominion. Hear, O Israel, the Shema. You know the Shema? Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And then I wrote, don't you just want to shout it? When I just sang it. Isn't it just so simple? What was the problem? Why didn't they get it? They didn't get it for the same reason people don't get it now. They don't know the scriptures. They don't care about the scriptures. And they won't waste their time learning the scriptures. To their ignorance, to their own folly, to their own destruction, and ultimately to their own eternal demise. Look at that verse in Daniel. He's telling his people, there came like a Son of Man, Adam, a human being, but conceived of the Holy Spirit with the divine nature and attributes of God. He came to the Ancient of Days and was presented to him. He came to the earth, went about his Father's business, ministered, was crucified, died, buried, and rose again on the third day, the sign of Jonah. And came to the Ancient of Days and was presented to him. Can it be any clearer? The Son of Man going to the Ancient of Days and being presented to him? And to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages